Game time, we diving deep. From the stairs to the play, no time for sleep. Below the surface, we're working, we set the scene. Who's your host? Scott Levine. Below the surface.
Let's kick things off by uncovering the full landscape of the wide receivers, starting with my hidden threats and working up the tiers all the way to the ultimate top dog. From flex plays to top tier starters, each tier tells a story about the player style, draft value, and upside potential. Let's start at the bottom and climb our way up to the peak of production. My hidden threats, tier 9. These two wide receivers in this tier barely make the list of my top 36. And these are flex players who I'm comfortable drafting as my wide receiver 3 or 4. The first guy I want to start out with is Chris Olave, who finds himself in just a terrible situation this year once again. He enters the year with Spencer Rattler, my Gamecocks quarterback, now getting his first shot at the starting role heading into the season. He was named the starter just recently, and Spencer Rattler, he was a good quarterback for our South Carolina Gamecocks, but he does have a lot of limitations, especially we saw last year he tended to throw a lot into traffic. Not the most impressive quarterback in the league, definitely one of the bottom starting quarterbacks. We'll see how he does this year with Chris Olave, but I think that Chris Olave should have a high target share this season, and that's good. I've heard a few analysts think that he should be closer to Rashid Shaheed, but I think he's the clear alpha in this offense. If he can stay healthy, that's really what's keeping him down here is his health concerns and quarterback play. So we've seen wide receivers overcome bad quarterback play, so can Chris Olave stay healthy this year? He's a great producer when he's on the field. Moving along to our other hidden threat, we have Deebo Samuel, freshly acquired from the San Francisco 49ers, now a Washington Commander, paired up with Jaden Daniels. And that's exciting. They moved on from Brian Robinson Jr., which means more touches should be going Deebo's way in the running game, I would assume. He definitely showed the ability in San Francisco to be able to take carries for them and be effective around the goal line in that capacity. This offseason, Terry McLaurin had been holding in looking for a new contract extension with the Commanders, and that's been allowing Deebo to build a great rapport in his absence with Jaden Daniels, getting all those first-team offensive targets and just practicing with this team. He needs to practice with this team, no doubt. He wasn't here last year, and they're going to be able to move him all over the formation. He's an exciting player with the ball in his hands, and he can definitely be a solid flex for you guys. All right, that wraps up our hidden threats, and those are more wide receiver 3s, guys that you can get a little bit later in your drafts, maybe round 7 is where I'd look to click them. Now into our next tier, tier 8, our boom or bust wide receivers. And the first guy I'm going to start with has been in flux all offseason, and I really didn't know how to best place him. But he falls here in tier 8, and that is Rashee Rice for the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, Rashee Rice is a tremendous football player, and we saw how amazing those first 3 weeks of the season were last year. Just really building off his strong rookie year from the Super Bowl and developing that connection with Patrick Mahomes. Clearly have a great chemistry between each other, and he was a dominant fantasy player in the few weeks before his injury. Now, he's coming off an injury this year from last year. Patrick Mahomes ran into his knee, and Patrick Mahomes threw a pick, and then Rashee was trying to hunt down the tackler, and Mahomes went into his knee trying to make the tackle on the interceptor. Unfortunate, cost him his whole season, and then now he's going to be suspended for the first 6 weeks of the season. That's a big hit to your team. 6 weeks is no joke. Most likely, Rashee Rice will end up not being in the starter range of picks at this point in the draft season. He'll probably be like that first bench player taken in that range just because of his upside when he's healthy. If you feel like you can make up the value or make trades to overcome like a slower start, like a 2-4 start, and you think you can still make the playoffs because he's that good of a talent and you'll have him for the playoffs, I really do think once he's back, he's probably going to be the highest highest target earner. Maybe not the first game he's back, but eventually by the playoffs, he'll likely be Mahomes' go-to guy. And there is obviously a lot of risk with Rashee Rice. That Xavier Worthy has a chance to overtake that role from Rashee if his play shows it. Worthy, they didn't really connect on many deep balls last year, but if Worthy and Mahomes are able to start clicking at the way that Mahomes is capable of, and Andy Reid wants to use his first-round wide receiver as the focal point of the offense, then Rashee Rice might not be as good as we remember. And it was really only like a limited sample size of Rashee playing that well, and that was also without Hollywood who got banged up in one of those games, and Xavier Worthy was still just a rookie entering the league and not too accustomed to the Chiefs offense. A lot of factors heading into this year with the Chiefs, and the Chiefs are just going to be an interesting team. They're probably underpriced due to all the question marks, so if you want to target Chiefs, I have no problem with that. All right, that was a long winded talk on just Rashee. Our next boomer bust wide receiver is Matthew Golden for the Green Bay Packers, and he was a first-round wide receiver out of Texas, and he had a lower tier production profile compared to other first-round wide receivers, but he's still shown me a lot of impressive things in training camp and throughout that playoff stretch that he had with Texas last year. Also, he's just a first-round draft pick, and with Jaden Reed dealing with that foot injury, the Jones fracture in his foot, I'm no doctor, but I know foot injuries tend to linger, so I just want to be careful around drafting Jaden Reed. And Matthew Golden, if he can be a strong target earner in this offense, he'll be a really valuable pick in this range. Jordan Love has been talking highly of him all offseason, and I think the Green Bay Packers run a good offense that is pretty efficient and can be higher scoring. I like to buy into better teams. Moving along, our next boomer bust player is Ricky Pearsall. This guy has gone through a lot in his short career. He got shot as a rookie and also dealt with injuries. Now they move on from Debo. Brandon Ayuk is going to be on the pup, missing at least the first 5 to 6 weeks. And then for Jawan Jennings, they're unsure if his calf is going to be right for week 1. He's trending towards playing, but all these injuries to the wide receiver room, it's just going to make Ricky Pearsall have such a safe, valuable role early on into the fantasy season. And it's usually the young guys that, if they establish themselves as a good target earner early in their careers and their quarterback can trust them, they're probably going to be great down the stretch in the fantasy playoffs. Ricky Pearsall, he's in that range where he's not quite rising high enough despite all the injuries, but people take him above his ADP because they see the upside. And I've seen in best balls and other leagues that he's going as high as the 6th round. I really love Ricky Pearsall as my flex target, and he could be a guy who can outdo his ADP, in my opinion, very easily. The next boomer bust player is literally the definition of boomer bust. His role is just so unknown, and that is the unicorn, Travis Hunter. He plays both offense and defense, so that makes things a little bit more tricky. We don't know how many offensive snaps he's going to be getting, especially with the ability to play on both sides of the ball. They might want to limit some of his touches so that he doesn't burn out early on into the season or just get injured by overplaying him. But Travis Hunter, he continues to talk himself up and saying that he's capable of playing 100% snaps both ways. He doesn't care. But I think it'll be a little bit different in the NFL. I think he'll be like 80% of the snaps on offense and be like a pretty full-time wide receiver. And then on defense, he'll be on the field like 35% of the time, being on those high-value downs, those passing downs, end of the game, 2-minute drill, stuff like that, where they can get creative with him and bring him on to be the playmaker he is. For offense, I think that when he's out there, he's going to be targeted, and I know that there's a lot of risk that comes along with a player like him, but he was drafted 2 overall. This team traded up a future first-round draft pick. They really seem to believe in the kid. I want to make sure that my audience knows that I'm not fading Travis Hunter at all, and I think he's honestly a great pick. He really can outproduce where he's expected to go, and his yards per target, his targets per route run are going to be very high in my opinion. I think Trevor Lawrence, when he's out on the field, is going to be looking for him early and often. With Brian Thomas, he has a great guy to draw coverage away and take the top off of defenses, and I think these two players complement each other unbelievably. It's like a match made in heaven, honestly. And I think that the Jaguars are trending in such a great direction. I want to have pieces of this Jaguars offense this year. I saw what happened with Liam Cohen last year, and I don't want to miss out on their explosion. And then finally, our last boomer bust player is Rome Odunze. Now, Rome Odunze, he had such a poor rookie year, man. It was really unfortunate. Top 10 pick, drafted 9th overall to the Chicago Bears, coming in, paired up with supposedly superstar Caleb Williams, and these two were supposed to figure it out in year one, turn up and make the playoffs, and people had such high expectations of the Bears, expecting them to be great from the very first start of the season. It just didn't happen for the Bears last year. Their O-line was atrocious. Their running game was just average, and Caleb was just off. He didn't trust himself. He was missing reads, missing roam constantly deep. Their uncatchable target rate was actually awful, and now it's just a whole new offense. Ben Johnson comes in. He wants them to play on time. He wants Caleb to get the ball out quick. He's all about establishing the trenches and winning at the line of scrimmage and dominating up front. So with that, I'm expecting Caleb to have much more time in the pocket and play in structure way better, just hitting his reads. We'll finally be able to see Caleb make some magic outside of the pocket, because that's what he can do best. But sometimes he holds the ball a little too long. Caleb should always be one of those guys who's going to have a little bit more sacks, just because he likes to be creative and he likes to test boundaries and try and make a guy miss in the pocket and manipulate the pocket to hit that guy deep downfield, and that's exciting, and I want to see him take a little bit more shots. He was a little hesitant, maybe taking a few extra sacks to avoid throwing turnover-worthy plays. With Ben Johnson, he'll figure it out, what works, what doesn't in practice, and what he can try out in the games. I really just want to get pieces of this Bears offense. Rome, he's going to be battling it out with a lot of competition, but he's been making his mark in camp, and he's another exciting player that is on a exciting offense that might be the cheapest it'll ever be. I completely understand buying into the hype with Rome Odunze. Now that wraps up our tier 8 boom or bust tier, and these guys are all guys that I'm looking to target in my drafts. They're all solid players and good wide receiver 3s. Wouldn't love to have any of them as my wide receiver 2, but very strong flexes. The next tier is tier 7, my Lifeboats tier. And the reason they're a Lifeboat tier is because these guys are safe. They're not going to sink your ship. They're actually going to help you stay steady. Some of these guys you might even want to consider taking over some people in my tier 6 or maybe even my tier 5, depending on how you feel about these players. But these players are just boring, safer players to me. I like them as players, but I don't know if these guys are going to be the reason that you win a championship. They might be a good guy to help you if you have a more risky lineup early, but these are guys in the rounds 4 to 6 range that I feel like have a little bit less upside. Not that I don't like these players. These are good players. They just seem to be players I'm a little more hesitant to draft than the guys above them. Starting off with my first player in the Lifeboat tier, and that's Terry McLaurin. And I understand, Terry McLaurin this low, it seems crazy, coming off a wide receiver 7 season. But we gotta remember, last year Terry McLaurin was being drafted in this range exactly, with an unknown rookie quarterback. I get it. It's mainly because the touchdown total is really what got him there. Terry McLaurin, his yards numbers, his catches numbers wouldn't have you in that top 7 range, but he had 13 receiving touchdowns last year with Jaden Daniels. Obviously, touchdowns are the least sticky stat, as we know in fantasy football. So, expecting a big bit of regression. And if he sees under 10 touchdowns, Terry McLaurin, he's just going to be overpriced in my opinion. I don't mind him in the 4th round, but in the 3rd round, it's much too early, and he's just a guy I'm worried. He missed the whole offseason basically holding in, looking for his new contract, and those guys tend to always start a little slower. They also brought in Deebo Samuel, who's better than any wide receiver that they had on the roster. They still kept Zach Ertz from last year, who was one of Jaden's top targets. And this is a heavy rushing attack. Expect Jaden to take a lot on the ground rushing. They have a 3-headed monster. Not really a monster. 3-headed committee, I'll say. With Bill, Krosky Merritt. Let's go, Lil Bill. And then Austin Eckler and Chris Rodriguez, who will be mixing in as well. They'll be heavily involved, I assume, as well. Terry might see less work than he did last year, and he just might be a little bit less consistent than he was. That's why he's all the way down here, but not a player I'm completely avoiding. Definitely feels overpriced to me right now. My next Lifeboat wide receiver is DK Metcalf. An eventful offseason for DK Metcalf as he moves team, now a Pittsburgh Steeler, no longer a Seattle Seahawk, moving on to play with Aaron Rodgers. And this wide receiver core that they have in Pittsburgh is actually quite sad behind DK Metcalf. They don't have a ton of established names behind him. Calvin Austin, Roman Wilson. These guys haven't really made a significant name for themselves in the league. So I expect DK Metcalf to see an excellent target share in this offense. The only worry is this is going to be a very run-focused offense, and it's just going to be very inconsistent, I would say. DK is going to have to hit that high touchdown upside with Aaron Rodgers to pay off as an elite weapon. He's not a guy who's going to catch 100 balls, but he might see over 140 targets. In the range he's drafted, that's just a really nice safe floor for DK, and he's one of the safest guys in his range, I would say. Aaron Rodgers shown the ability last year to still throw a bunch of touchdowns, and that's what DK Metcalf needs. He's a good red zone weapon. Hopefully their connection shows strong throughout this season. They brought in a few new pieces this offseason along with DK. They brought in Jonnu Smith to pair up with their other tight end, Pat Freiermuth. They also drafted Caleb Johnson to pair up with Jalen Warren, and there'll be a dynamic duo back there for them to help keep this team on the field. And DK should definitely be the focal point out of all of those guys. Moving along, we got our next lifeboat player, and that's Zay Flowers for the Baltimore Ravens. Now, Zay Flowers, the reason he falls this low is mainly just due to his lack of touchdown upside. He hasn't quite shown in his career that he's a real red zone target earner and a high touchdown total player. Flowers is really good at his ceiling weeks. He can have those big plays and really just be efficient on 4 catches. He have a 4-catch, 100-yard touchdown day. But for fantasy, Lamar last year threw 41 touchdowns, and that's a very high touchdown number. When you see that, you're just worried about possible regression in the offense, especially when you got a guy like Derrick Henry behind him. So touchdowns are a little bit worrisome for Zay Flowers. He'll be a fine flex option, and he'll have those games where he might be able to win you a week. But he's also a guy I'm less trustworthy of because of the offense he plays in, and they can be dominating teams so much that they don't even need to pass, or they have one-play touchdowns to Rashad Bateman or a big run to Henry and the game's just over, and Zay Flowers is not even needed for the whole second half. So stuff like that can happen. If the Ravens are in more competitive games this year and struggle during the regular season, then maybe Zay Flowers, you can make the argument to me that he's one of the most underrated picks. With a team in Baltimore who I think is a potential Super Bowl contender, I think that they're going to roll through the regular season as they do, and the guys that you want are just Lamar and Henry really in this offense. Rashad Bateman late as well. So maybe that's why I'm not as in on Zay. But Zay is a good football player. If you actually watch him, he really is good. Not as much for fantasy. Same thing for this next guy, actually. Not as great for fantasy, but typically always outdoes his ADP. He's just slept on because of the offenses that he's in, and that's Devontae Smith. He has to battle it out with A.J. Brown and now Saquon Barkley, of course. And they still have Dallas Goedert and other names behind them. And then Jalen Hurts running his tush push and taking away all those red zone passes. And they all change into red zone tush pushes. In this offense, you just got to really hope for the efficiency to be there and maybe Jalen to throw the ball a little bit more and their defense to take a bit of a step back because they're a younger defense. And that would make them have to throw the ball a little bit more. Devontae Smith, he's a really strong player and a solid wide receiver 3 that you'll definitely feel comfortable within your lineup. There's just games where he'll disappear completely because of the game script, similar to the Ravens. And then our last lifeboat player who could easily be higher up as well. These wide receivers, man, they're just so tough to rank, and the order changes constantly for me. But I feel comfortable with where these players are at in this video as of my recording date. And this last guy is Courtland Sutton for the Denver Broncos. Now, Courtland Sutton had an unbelievable season last year. Many expected nothing from this Broncos offense. They were literally just cast to the side and treated like nothing for fantasy. He was drafted probably outside the top 30, 40 wide receivers in most leagues, Courtland Sutton, last year, and he just really had an unbelievable year, finding that connection with Bo Nix, getting hit on those deep targets, and having one of his best seasons of his career. They should continue that chemistry into year 2. Courtland Sutton, another guy I like as my wide receiver 3. He just keeps that safe floor. The only worry is the Broncos turn to a more conservative running offense this year and really rely on their defense and run game to win them games. Just because they brought in 2 new running backs and got rid of a majority of the running backs last year, and they do have one of the most elite O-lines in the league. And last year, they had one of the worst rushing efficiency despite having such a top-end O-line. So if that turns around and they're able to just rely on their running game, I think it's going to be a lower scoring, slower paced games in Denver, and that will hurt Courtland Sutton just a bit. His output won't be as significant as last year. Now that wraps up our tier 7, the Lifeboats tier. We move into our next tier, wide receivers with emerging upside. This is my favorite tier of wide receivers, guys. Some of these guys you can get super late and at great values. You don't have to reach on these guys at all. They just fall in drafts and you scoop up their value. All of these guys I'm willing to take. These are guys I'm so high on. I love all these picks that you can make at their prices, and some go earlier, some go later, but at their price, I think that they're all good picks right now. The first guy I'm going to go into is Jalen Waddle. He makes the tier 6 emerging upside tier. I understand Jalen Waddle has let us fantasy managers down the last few seasons. He really has. I've been a guy who's bought into Jalen Waddle ever since his first 2 years. He just showed what it takes to be fantasy capable in this league. He's been a top 5 performer. And then Tyreek Hill joins the offense, and he's just been battling injuries these last few years, but now I think he's ready to take the torch. What I've been hearing at a preseason camp is that he's looking like an absolute unit out on the field and making plays constantly. I think this is a team that's going to be losing a lot of games, and this defense is not good. Their cornerback room got very depleted due to injury, and now it's just mainly Minka in that room that's competent. They're going to have to rely on Tua's arm, and they're going to have to play from behind quite a bit, I would assume. Also, they tend to start the seasons hotter and passing the ball better in the warmer climates, and Waddle can definitely be a guy who can get out to a hot start because all it takes for him is one play. Over the last few seasons, they've been guarding the Dolphins in a too high shell, which has been limiting Waddle's game. Last year, it was just Achane and Jonnu Smith who were producing for them. With Jonnu now traded away to the Steelers, I think that really opens back up the door for them to go back to their wide receiver heavy focused, basically having over 65% of the targets go to the wide receiver position. And that would just greatly benefit Jalen Waddle. He's got some touchdown upside because of his big playability, and he's also a useful player after the catch. He's just a versatile player and a super fast player, and he's highly drafted. He's shown he can do it before, and he's also in the prime age of his career. I think we should see a bounce back. If he can stay healthy, he's severely underpriced. There's a world where like he's the better pick at his price than Tyreek. I understand if you want to get a piece of the Dolphins offense, but you're worried about Achane's calf injury. You're worried about Tyreek's wrist from last year and his oblique. You just want to play it safe and get Jalen Waddle in the 5th or 6th. Jalen Waddle, he's just a really good player, man, and I think we should continue to keep him on our radars. And even if you've been burned before, I understand wanting some of those safer options. Again, one of the downsides is Tagovailoa. Tua is a guy who's gotten hurt. That also really hurts this offense, and you got to worry about his head injuries. But Jalen Waddle, he's just got that upside that we look for in fantasy football. All right, let's move along, and the next merging upside wide receiver I have is George Pickens from the Dallas Cowboys. Like I said about the Dallas Cowboys, a lot going on there, but that means this offense should have to cook. This defense is mediocre at best. I really like their draft class on the defensive side of the ball. Donovan Ezeraku out of Boston College, unbelievable talent, top leader in sacks in the FBS, and they also brought in Savon Revel Jr., who is another guy I was pretty high on to play cornerback, but he's coming in off an injury. The loss of Micah Parsons is just irreplaceable. You can't move on from both DeMarcus Lawrence and Micah Parsons and just bring in Kenny Clark and pay OC Odigizua and expect that defense to be legit. This team is in limbo now with a $60 million quarterback. The offense, that Dak Prescott, man, a lot falls on this guy. George Pickens, they brought him in. He's a guy who suits Dak's play a lot, in my opinion, and that's why I have him so high. George Pickens is a great man coverage beater and great against the press coverage as well, and then is great at those big plays, so contested down the field balls where Dak is willing to throw those outside the numbers, down the sidelines. That's what George Pickens excels at. Coach Schottenheimer said he also wanted to get Pickens involved on some slant routes, maybe a little bit more of a different route tree than just what he was running in Pittsburgh. Ceedee Lamb, he's great over the middle of the field, so he'll open up a lot on the outside for Pickens, and this is one of the best duos they've had in a while. I think that Pickens can easily reach the highest touchdown total of his career in Dallas this season under Schottenheimer. I don't think that Schottenheimer is the long-term future coach for this team, and I don't understand what exactly Jerry Jones was thinking this offseason, but a lot is going to rely on Ceedee Lamb and George Pickens and this passing attack. Expect a lot out of this kid and expect his boom weeks to be booming. Really should explode in his best weeks. Now, the next player on my list, I can't keep talking high enough about this kid. Wherever you think you should draft him, it's not high enough, and that's Emeka Egbuka. His ADP is just not catching up. Right now, the news broke Chris Godwin, he's on the pup. He's going to be out multiple weeks, at least till late October. And then we also have Jalen McMillan going to be out until at least week 9, dealing with a head and neck injury. I hate to see that. Kid really broke out last year and seemed to have a locked-in role for this team. He had 8 touchdowns as a rookie. Baker seemed to trust him in the red zone area. But now Emeka Egbuka walks into a role of 100-plus targets locked, in my opinion, and people are just not catching up with how valuable he is about to be for this Buccaneers offense. I said it with Bucky Irving. They have one of the best playoff schedules for fantasy football, playing this Dolphins team in the final playoff game as well, and their defensive backs are just horrendous. I just can't imagine not wanting to take Emeka Egbuka in your drafts. I'd be willing to reach on him multiple rounds. If the ADP was correct and he was correctly priced, I think he should be in the 5th round. He has the definite capability of finishing as a top 15 wide receiver for your team, and I just wish I had taken more of him all summer long. His ADP continues to rise on all best ball platforms, and he's in the 5th round where he belongs now. But on these other non-paid contests, the ADP just hasn't caught up, and you just got to reach multiple rounds on him to get him and make sure you secure him. He's easily one of my favorite picks, and I think should definitely be a top 20 wide receiver this season. He honestly might be my favorite wide receiver rookie this season to draft. I think even more safe than Ted McMillan, who is Teteroa McMillan, baby. Wide receiver for the University of Arizona. He is actually incredible. When you watch this kid play, he moves so fluidly and he just can really make plays after the catch as such a large size. He's 6'4", 200 plus pounds, and he's just a really big bodied athletic freak, and he's so talented in the red zone. If Bryce and McMillan can build that chemistry and get the routes down where their timing is perfect, he can really break out, because Bryce has shown the ability to hit wide receivers in stride, and a lot of drops last year from Xavier Legette on stuff like that. I'm just excited for the Panthers offense as well. If you want to get Tet, you don't even have to reach too high on him. He typically falls to like the 6th round I see in a lot of drafts. Maybe in the sharper leagues, he's going a little bit earlier. He definitely gets drafted in the wide receiver 20 range consistently in the best ball drafts. In college, he just showed unbelievable capability of being an alpha wide receiver. Back-to-back 1,300 yard seasons with 8+ touchdowns in both. And he even had 8 touchdowns as a freshman as well. Another guy that I think is just going to come into this league and have a massive role from the start of the season. If he's healthy and that hamstring injury doesn't affect this season at all, it'll be a great year. And the next guy is Jameson Williams for the Detroit Lions. He is such a unique player. His story is so crazy, how he just dealt with so much adversity in his career. And then last year was just able to be such a X factor for this Lions offense, consistently making plays deep down the field, getting behind the coverage, making guys look silly on end arounds, and just like weaving in and out of guys. Jameson is such a unique skill set for the NFL, and what he can do is really complementary to Amon-Ra St. Brown, who commands the middle of the field. He really is able to take the top off the defense and draw coverage away from him. These two work in such synergy. Jared Goff is starting to trust him more and more, and this coaching staff is talking him up all offseason. He is a guy who's made consistent strides, and they've been highly critical of him in the off seasons, and now he seems to be actually maturing and finding his role in this offense and understanding what it takes to be an NFL player and the day in and day out grind that it is, and what to do off the field as well as on the field. They don't even have to be as efficient as they were under Ben Johnson. If they are able to run a few more plays, that might be even better for fantasy. And obviously Jameson Williams, if he's hitting at his top end, he's taking plays away because he's going to be able to hit those 50+ yard touchdown plays or 30+ yard touchdowns, whatever it is. He's a guy who can make those long touchdowns, and he has that high touchdown ceiling because of that. Jared Goff consistently throws a lot of yards every year. We know he's a consistent, capable quarterback, steady hand for this offense, and even with the loss of Frank Ragnow in this offense, they have the weapons around them to be an efficient, effective offense. They're a team capable of scoring tons of points. They did it last year, and they've been one of the winningest teams over the last 3 years. It's not just a fluke that they were good last year. They're getting Aiden Hutchinson back. This is a good football team, and I really think that Jameson Williams has established himself as a true X factor for this Lions team, and he's going to make a big difference this year and exceed his value. The guys that outdo their ADPs in year 3 typically do well in year 4, especially young receivers. Jamison Williams' ADP is currently lower than he finished last year in most drafts. So he just has that room to keep growing from last year, and he's another guy I've been heavily targeting this offseason. Next player up is Xavier Worthy, who's got to rise up your boards now with the Rashee Rice news. Not being on the field, he has the ability to just take the top off of defense and be like Tyreek Hill light for this offense, or like a supercharged McCole Hardman, what they actually wanted him to be. And Xavier Worthy really popped in that Super Bowl, and Mahomes and him finally hit big on a few deep plays. And if that's going to start happening in the regular season, and Mahomes looks really locked in right now, he looks even more fit this year coming in, and I think he's coming in with a vengeance, with a lot of doubters, that feeling of losing by that much points. And Xavier Worthy is going to have to step up and be that guy. I think Andy Reid is going to want to get their first round pick involved quite a bit more than they did in the past. Worthy's going to need to be a necessary piece from the start of the season because of the Rashee Rice suspension. He's going to be used all over the formation, and Andy is one of the best at scheming up touches. We'll look into Xavier Worthy's first read target share and his target share in general and how many touches he's getting. He's always a guy that is more exciting because he's got that higher touchdown upside. Even for Vegas, they have him like pretty low odds to get 10 touchdowns this season. He's like one of the top 4 highest, along with guys like Jamar Chase. And Vegas is a great tool for you guys, honestly, for your start decisions. If you just look at the books and you can see your guy is projected a few more catches, a few more yards, and he's projected plus 185 to your other guys plus 240 to get a touchdown, it makes it an easier decision looking at Vegas for those start stats. But back to Xavier Worthy, he's just a guy that's going to come in and be a force in the first few weeks of the season and can really win you weeks. Maybe be as high as like a 18.5 point score, like a real wide receiver 1 for you in those weeks without Rashee Rice. And that also makes me want to bump up Travis Kelce. They've said he slimmed down, looking better than ever, probably wants to impress his new fiance, Taylor Swift. I don't know if anybody has heard about it, but Travis Kelce is marrying Taylor Swift. So maybe he's playing with a little bit of an edge this year for his wife. This is probably his last year ever as a Chief. It just feels like this would be it. But we'll see. The Chiefs should just be a high-scoring offense that you want to be a part of and grab pieces from. Xavier Worthy, I'd be willing to draft as high as like the back-end turn of the 3rd, 4th round, maybe even the 3rd round. He's going to be an electric player. Another guy I'm very interested in is Jackson Smith-Njigba for the Seattle Seahawks. His situation is changing so much this offseason. Drastic changes in Seattle. Coach Mike Macdonald was not satisfied clearly at all with their season last year. They were a game short of the playoffs, and they just did a complete overhaul. He just felt like the roster wasn't his. He clears out his offensive coordinator that he brought in first time and brought in Clint Kubiak, an established guy who's been in the league. He comes over from the Saints. Then they add Sam Darnold. They beef up their offensive line in this offseason with a first-round draft pick, Gray Zabel, a guy I scouted personally. He was one of the offensive linemen that I had a first-round grade on. Good pick there. He's a great fit for that zone running him. And then they also bring in Torrey Horton in the draft. They get rid of DK Metcalf via trade. They sign Cooper Kupp. So it's just a whole new team, really. Just completely overhauled. The only real mainstays are Charbonnet and Ken Walker in the backfield, and Jackson Smith-Njigba, of course. Jackson Smith-Njigba, he actually had some unbelievable weeks without DK Metcalf there. They really were relying on him, and he was taking on more and more responsibility. If he can prove to them that he can play more and more at the X role, then he'll just continue to open up his game and be a difference maker for this team. The thing holding him back mainly is his touchdown ceiling, and if Sam Darnold, without the array of talent that they had in Minnesota, as well as an elite blocking unit, that he can replicate that in Seattle with much less talent. We saw that he hyper-targeted Justin Jefferson quite a bit, and if Jackson Smith-Njigba can really get that high target volume role and moved across the formation often and just those first read targets, then he's going to be a PPR demon and a guy that you're going to want to have a piece of on your fantasy team. If you can get him as your wide receiver 2, that's probably fair to me, but I like him most as a wide receiver 3. That's mainly in 2 flex leagues that you're getting him as a wide receiver 3, because you can start many more receivers, or 3 wide receiver starts, or best ball leagues where it's a start 3 wide receiver as well. I like Jackson Smith-Njigba a lot in PPR leagues. He's got a good floor, and the only thing you're really worried about is touchdown upside, because he's going to get there on volume. As you see, Cooper Kupp doesn't make my list. I think Cooper Kupp is a bit washed, but Torrey Horton is intriguing. The other wide receivers in the room with Jackson Smith-Njigba, Cooper Kupp is old and washed to me right now, and I probably wouldn't draft him at all this year, especially seeing that Sean McVay gave up on him, and him and Stafford were just so close, and I trust their staff. And then Torrey Horton, the rookie, I'm intrigued by. He's a good late round flyer and a guy to just keep an eye on. The final guy in the emerging upside tier is Garrett Wilson. And Garrett Wilson paired back up with his buddy Justin Fields. Now, we'll have to see if they can replicate their college production, but Garrett Wilson was the wide receiver 8 last year in an offense that was so chaotic, with Devontae Adams coming in mid-year last year and Aaron Rodgers having just such a negative impact on Garrett Wilson. He was talking about never wanting to be a Jet again, but once Aaron Rodgers was gone, he signed his contract and things seem to be back on the up and up. I expect Garrett Wilson to have such a large target share in this offense. There's really no one else on his level at all, especially as a receiving threat. The guys in the room, Josh Reynolds, Arian Smith, a guy they just drafted out of Georgia, Xavier Gipson, and then tight ends Mason Taylor and Jeremy Ruckert. They don't really have a ton of guys that anybody's going to find fantasy worthy or relevant. It's really going to fall on Garrett Wilson's shoulders in this offense, and he could easily see a 30% target share in this offense and see 40% of the field's touchdown production. It's just going to be the Garrett Wilson show for this offense. I know people are going to worry about Justin Fields' ability to hold up that production, but he's done it in the past, and we just got to hope that Garrett Wilson continues to get open and in the red zone for Justin Fields so he can make those big plays happen. And the passing volume is what you're going to have to worry about most with Garrett Wilson this year. He has the capabilities to be an upside wide receiver 2 and have weeks as a wide receiver 1. Now, that is the last of our emerging upside wide receivers and moves us into our established vets. These are guys that we've seen them have production year in and year out, but age is really the biggest factor in their draft cost, and maybe some injuries in the past. That leads me into wide receiver Mike Evans. He is Mr. Consistency. We all know he had 1,000 yards in that final game. After missing a bunch of weeks last year, he came back, and when Godwin got hurt, he got hyper-targeted. And now that Godwin's starting the year out again, his touchdown production is always there. He's a guy that's going to see close to 10 touchdowns yearly. It's not surprised me if he sees 12 plus this year at all. He's a great wide receiver too. You can get him in the 3rd or 4th round. Sometimes he falls late into the 4th round. If you start out running back heavy, you can get him as a great wide receiver too. So if you go RB wide receiver and he falls to you as your wide receiver 2, I love it. He's even a guy that you could be risky, and if you get a tight end and 2 great running backs, he could be a wide receiver 1 for you. I don't love that, but he's definitely going to have a great start to the season, I would say. You just want to take advantage of the Buccaneers' offensive skill players for their playoff schedules. He's a guy you might want to trade for as well later into the season if you didn't draft him. Our next established vet is none other than the infamous cheetah, Tyreek Hill. This year just feels like a year that I'm okay missing out on Tyreek Hill, man. I just don't feel comfortable drafting him. I understand the upside completely. He just didn't seem to have the same step. And maybe he's a guy that gets traded during this season. There's definitely a possibility for that. If the Dolphins start off to a really slow start, he doesn't seem to be a guy who buys into a team that's losing and might just check out. That's why I worry about Tyreek Hill most, is the Dolphins being a poor team this season and him not acting professionally with the team day in and day out and giving the proper effort on every individual play that he's out there. But Tyreek Hill early in the season could be a guy that makes you think, like, how did I pass on this guy? Was a top 3 wide receiver, maybe the first wide receiver taken off your board last year, and now he's all the way in the 3rd round. So I completely see the other side of the argument, that playing devil's advocate. And then Devon Achane, if you're worried about the calf, I'm personally not. The team said he's ready to go for week 1. If he's playing week 1, I'm expecting him to play great. So Tyreek Hill, like I said, I feel more comfortable with Waddle than Hill at his price this year, but he could be one of those guys that leaves your draft mates thinking, how do we pass on this guy early? Even as a Tyreek Hill manager, if he's giving you great production early, I'd be looking to move him low key, especially if you can get into that upper echelon of guys that I'm going to get to later who are in my tier 3s or higher, and you can flip him for really highly drafted superstar. Then I would take advantage of that early season production from Tyreek Hill. Finally, our last established vet in tier 5, that is DJ Moore for the Chicago Bears. And I have been so high on this man this whole offseason. I almost wanted to put him into a tier higher, but I'm going to leave him in this tier. The biggest change for this Bears team is clearly Ben Johnson and how he's going to deploy DJ Moore, and nobody knows who exactly is going to be given that Amon-Ra St. Brown high valuable PPR target role. But DJ Moore, I think, is the best suited for that role. And he's right at the back end of his prime years, but still in his prime. He's got the ability to be a wide receiver 1 caliber player and be a top 12 guy for fantasy this season. We saw what Ben Johnson's offense was able to unlock for the Lions, and obviously they had the talent, and it's the same for this Bears offense. If you believe in Caleb Williams the way I do, then you would be buying pieces of this Bears in your draft. Any player you can get your hands on. I don't care who it is that you like. If you're a Rome Odunze guy, draft Rome. If you like Luther Burden, their rookie wide receiver out of Missouri, draft him. If you're a DJ Moore guy like I am, he falls into the 4th round and he's pretty undervalued. Like, all these Bears players might be at their floor if Caleb Williams hits the way I believe he can. And that's not even including their tight end, Colston Loveland, who, if you like him, I think you can draft him as well. He could be a top maybe 6-7 tight end as a rookie. We've seen these tight ends come in, especially under a Ben Johnson offense. We've seen a rookie tight end literally succeed in his offense before. So all of these guys definitely have their role. Even if you're a DeAndre Swift guy, who I'm not, or Roshan Johnson, Kyle Monangai, whoever you like of the handcuffs, I think you should be taking at least one of these Bears players on your roster in all your fantasy drafts, however many leagues you're in. DJ Moore, he's a guy who can do it on limited catches and be a highly efficient down the field player, or he can be a close to the line player and do screens and all that stuff. They said they've been using him out of the backfield as a running back. I just want a guy who's that versatile and that productive throughout his entire career, consistently producing 1,000 yards in his career. Hopefully with Ben Johnson, we'll hit a higher touchdown upside. Moore's always been a guy I've been higher on in fantasy, and I'm going to consistently tout him up, especially this seems to be the year. I was in on him last year, and I have to be in on him this year now that the situation is much better. Finally, moving into our tier 4, we're getting really into the thick of things, guys. Some of the best guys left to talk about. And the first tier 4 rising star player is Marvin Harrison Jr. for the Arizona Cardinals. This kid was drafted with a top 4 pick to Arizona and had all of the pressure, all of the hype on him. He's also a son of a Hall of Fame wide receiver with the same name as him. So big shoes to fill for the kid. Marvin Harrison Jr. came in as one of the most polished prospects I'd watched in a while. He just looked very nuanced on tape with his route running, but defenses were treating him like he wasn't a rookie at all. Last year, he was seeing double coverage right from the start of the season, and that made things tougher on the rookie. Many agree that he was a bust of a fantasy pick last year for redraft just because he was drafted in the top 10 wide receivers and finished outside the top 40. But he had a solid rookie season despite seeing heavy coverage, and they didn't really move him across the formation at all or give him easy targets. So hopefully they have a bit of a different scheme for him. We also saw Marvin Harrison definitely bulk up a bit. He's looking a lot bigger. That'll help him be stronger and better at winning at the catch point maybe. We'll see how he's able to translate that strength into his play and see how he uses it on the field. Kyler definitely going to have to be better at finding him and establishing a connection with him and looking to get him the ball more consistently. This is a player that I'm expecting a big jump from in his sophomore year. I'm not expecting a sophomore slump at all. I don't think his floor is much lower than 800 yards and 8 touchdowns, which he had as a rookie. I still do believe that Trey McBride is the number 1 option in this offense for one more year until next year. But Marvin Harrison Jr. by the end of the year might be able to overtake that role as the guy and really show people why he was drafted with a top 5 pick in the NFL draft. A lot of people are sleeping on this Arizona Cardinals team and think that they're maybe the worst team in this division. I definitely see the arguments for it, but man, I think this team is going to shock some people, and this defense is better than people think, and Marvin Harrison Jr. is better than you think. Draft him with ease as your wide receiver 2. You can feel comfortable throwing him into your wide receiver 2 this year. There'll definitely be some ups and downs, no doubt. Kyler's not the most consistent quarterback, but his touchdowns will be there and his targets will increase from last year. Marvin Harrison Jr. was being drafted in the first few picks of the second round, and now he's being drafted 3rd round to 5th round range, depending on your league mates. And more veteran league, Marvin Harrison Jr. is a guy that I'd be willing to take as my wide receiver 2, even as early as the back end 3rd round. Moving on to another sophomore wide receiver I'm excited about, Ladd McConkey. He was unbelievable down the stretch of his rookie year. Really broke out and established a strong connection with Justin Herbert, making play after play, getting open in the red zone, just a great route runner, a slot machine. Ladd McConkey, a guy I was high on coming out of Georgia, thought he was going to be a good wide receiver in the NFL, had what it took, good after the catch, and he really put on a heck of a performance in the playoffs despite his team letting him down. Justin Herbert underperforming and throwing that many picks, but he was ready to play in that playoff game and showed that he could be a great PPR machine in this league. Some of his advanced metrics are answer in some elite categories with some wide receivers, especially for rookies that have done some of the things that he was able to accomplish as a rookie. The only thing to worry about a little bit is they brought in Keenan Allen, who could command a bit of a target share away, and Justin Herbert has a familiar connection with him. So that definitely is going to limit his like elite alpha upside, but he's a great wide receiver too, one of the best. You can even take him as your wide receiver 1. Finished as wide receiver 11 last year. I think he'll finish in that top 15 range this year again. Now, our final rising star in tier 4, T. Higgins. He gets his contract with the Bengals, and his season last year was really incredible. He was a top tier points per game scorer when he played, elite points per game with the best of them. And when he plays, he's just an incredible wide receiver. His per game numbers are always great, and this season, the Bengals are going to have to throw the ball quite a bit. They did re-sign Trey Hendrickson finally and sign Shamar Stewart despite all that controversy that went on. But this team is going to be an offense that throws the ball over 60% of the time. And Joe Burrow is one of the best quarterbacks in the league, getting his wide receivers the ball in accurate positions for them to make a play after the catch. And T. Higgins can go up and get it with the best of them, making plays in the red zone, making plays deep down the field. He's got the contested catch ability. He's a great pairing with one of the best wide receiver duos in the league, and he'll be an exciting guy to have on your team. Joe Burrow is definitely a quarterback who can support 2 top 12 wide receivers, especially with wide receivers with their kind of caliber. And that wraps up our tier 4, and we'll take a quick break right here.
Moving on to my tier 3 players. The guys in this tier are just some of the hardest players for me to rank personally. These are my tier 3 big play threats, and all of these guys are tremendous, and depending on which day you ask me, one of these guys is going to be ranked higher than the other. The first name I'm going to bring up in this tier is A.J. Brown for the Philadelphia Eagles. He had a very interesting season last year. He had that whole scandal with the book and how Jalen Hurts, he said, wasn't passing enough and needed the ball more, and had that whole wellness book on the sidelines during the playoffs. It was just a whole funny thing with A.J. Brown, but when he was playing and healthy, he was super effective on the field. He definitely was a little bit inconsistent when Jalen started throwing the ball only like 20 times a game, but to start the season and in games where they were needing to pass the ball, A.J. Brown was on a mission. He was averaging like 100 yards and a touchdown, it seemed, early on in the season. Just absolute stud of a player. One of the best pure wide receiver talents in the league, true X alpha. And in fantasy football, if the Eagles can be a little bit more pass-centric this year, or Saquon can take a dip back and their defense is not as good, then A.J. Brown can get right back into that top 5 area. He's got the talent for it, no doubt. As of right now, he just cracks my tier 3, which is the top 10 remaining players. So he's in the top 10 for me currently. He's the last true solid wide receiver 1 that I really love to have as my wide receiver 1, but even better as a wide receiver 2. Now, my next player in tier 3, big play machine, is Drake London for the Atlanta Falcons. And man, I think that Drake London has the potential to be one of the best wide receivers in football this year. I'm expecting Penix to throw the ball a ton under Zach Robinson. Coming from college, this kid threw the ball a ton, threw over 550 times, back-to-back seasons. They're going to need to pass the ball to win games. I think that they're going to put a lot on the shoulders of Michael Penix this year. He's a better quarterback coming into this year than Kirk Cousins was last year, and we saw how good Drake London was for fantasy football last season. He has the capability of being 160 plus targets in this offense. Darnell Mooney banged up coming into this season with a bit of a shoulder injury. Kyle Pitts, known disappointment for many, but maybe this is his year to break out. Obviously, they have Bijan Robinson and a solid O-line who are going to help make this offense stay on the field more and just be a more effective offense with a superstar like that in the backfield. Drake London, I consistently feel he should be pushed into the first round. He finished wide receiver 6 last year, and he's in just as good a situation, if not a better situation this year than he was last year. Take Drake London with such confidence, guys. He's such a good wide receiver 1 to have, especially since you can get him in the second round. Next tier 3 player I have for you guys is Amon-Ra St. Brown for the Detroit Lions. And man, is this guy such a heartbeat for the Lions offense. Amon-Ra, he just wins so many different ways on the field, and he's just continue to grow into a better and better receiver, being able to line up everywhere now. He's moved from more of just this slot-only guy to being able to be a boundary receiver as well. And Jared Goff and him have some of the most incredible timing I've ever seen. These guys are so in sync. Their chemistry is top 5 in the league. He's gotten better and better in the red zone as well. He's one of the safest wide receivers in football, back-to-back top 3 wide receiver fantasy seasons. This Lions offense is no joke. Everybody should be wanting pieces of this offense. They have, like I mentioned earlier, Jamison Williams, a guy I'm into, Sam Laporta, a solid O-line, and a quarterback who consistently throws for 4,000 plus passing yards. It's just a recipe for success. Even with the loss of Ben Johnson, I expect this offense to pick up where it left off and be one of the top 5, top 3 scoring offenses in football. You can get him later than his wide receiver 3 finishes constantly, and he goes in like that wide receiver 6 to 9 range. He's become less cool to take because he's done it so much, and there's a lot of young players that are stepping up and are big names and rising stars in this league that people might want to take over him. But Amon-Ra, he's just going to be one of the safest picks that you can make in all of fantasy football again. Moving along to our next player is Nico Collins for the Houston Texans. And Nico Collins had such a crazy year. He had one of the most electrifying starts to a season and honestly looked like he could break some records based on how productive he was to start the year with CJ Stroud. Through his first few weeks, he was on pace for over 2,000 receiving yards. That's a record and historic pace, obviously. But unfortunately, injuries caught up to him, and he had to miss a bunch of games with a hamstring injury. And even when he came back, he wasn't the same, but he was still producing like a high-end fantasy player. He even had, in one of his first few games back, a holding call on like a 70-yard passing touchdown that just took all those points off the board. So he could have done even better than he did last year. But Nico Collins, he's in a solid situation. They let go of Stephon Diggs from last year, who played half the year and then got hurt. And then Tank Dell, who also got hurt last year. He's coming into this year on the pup, not expected to play until maybe really late in the year or not at all. The Texans knew they needed to bring in receiver help after that, and they drafted 2 wide receivers in the draft, both from the same college, Iowa State. They also signed in free agency Christian Kirk, who seems to be one of the most underrated wide receivers, and I think is a good sleeper pick. And wheels up again for Nico Collins in year 5. Hopefully this year is the year that Nico Collins can stay healthy through the entirety of the season, and we can really see his true potential, because he only played 15 games and started 10 of them in 2023. And then last year, he only played in 12 games and was still able to hit 1,000 yards. If you can get him in round 2 or late round 1, another steal with wide receiver 1 ceiling in his outcomes. Now, my next player is Brian Thomas Jr. for the Jacksonville Jaguars. And man, I am all aboard the Jacksonville Jaguars this year. I think that they're going to be one of the teams that surprises people the most this year. Trevor Lawrence is ready to take that jump under new head coach Liam Cohen and new offense coordinator Grant Udinski. I love the draft pick of Travis Hunter next to Brian Thomas Jr., and I think these two complement each other. These guys are just going to open up the field for Lawrence, and we saw what Brian Thomas Jr. was able to do with a Mac Jones under center. I know his numbers actually improved with Mac Jones compared to his numbers with Trevor Lawrence, but I think that's just him coming along in the year and Mac Jones hyper-targeting him heavy, and he was able to put on a show for everyone and show everyone the true talent that he was. Coming out of LSU, 17 touchdowns in his final season there. He's a guy I was super high on. I had Brian Thomas Jr. over Roma Dunze, and I thought he was in that clear tier right behind Malik Nabers and Marvin Harrison Jr. I'm so glad that he showed out the way he did this past season. He's in line for another great season. He's all-pro level talent, and he's got that high touchdown upside in this offense. The Jaguars, I think that they could even take the division with they made this offseason, and he's a huge part of the reason that this team is going to be successful. Brian Thomas Jr., drafted with confidence. I love Brian Thomas. I think he could finish top 4 again easily. All these guys have arguments to finish in the top 4, and it's so hard to rank these guys. So pick your flavor, pick your favorite preference. Whichever one you like most, I'm completely fine with. Now, this next player, he's got a little bit... Oh my gosh, I forgot Adams. Jeez. Alright, that stinks. Puka Nacua, he is a superstar. He came into the league as a rookie and just set the league on fire, breaking records as a rookie and building such incredible chemistry from the start of the season with Matt Stafford. I remember that week 1 game so vividly, his rookie year. 15 targets. Who is this guy? He just became a fantasy superstar and never looked back. The draft capital doesn't matter anymore with this guy. This guy is a bona fide star. He does throw himself around the football field crazily sometimes, and he does tend to get himself banged up and injured, and he didn't miss any games his rookie year, but he was always on the injury report, and then he did miss a lot of games last year. But when he's out on that field, man, he's just high yards per target, high targets per route run. They're constantly passing this guy the ball when he's on the field, and that's what you want to see. The biggest knock on Puka right now is his red zone ability and his touchdown upside. With Devontae Adams coming over, that definitely makes things a little bit tougher for Puka to hit that high alpha level season, but he's just so good. And we saw that there could be productive games with Vontae and Garrett Wilson last year. And Puka's, he's been in this offense before, and he's been with this quarterback. It's not like it's Aaron Rodgers who's going to completely flip to Devontae as soon as he comes in. Both of these guys will have a solid role. Puka is just an incredible player and should be able to remain in the top 12 again this season, especially points per game. Finally, our final Tier 3 big play machine, and we had to save my favorite player for last in this tier, and that's Malik Nabers. When he scores a touchdown, I want to hear you guys say, Leak! Oh man, I love Leak. He was drafted pick 6 by my New York Football Giants last year, and man, was he sensational as a rookie. Drew Lock, Boyle, DeVito, Daniel Jones, it didn't matter who was throwing this kid the football. He was going to make it happen. And that's what he did last year. He had over 1,200 yards and 7 touchdowns as a rookie, commanding 170 targets in 15 games. He actually missed 2 games to a concussion, his first ever head injury. It took him a little bit to come back to his best 100% self. But man, in that Colts game, you saw it all put together, what he can be in this league. Malik is just a superstar, and I think he is in the argument already for a top 3 wide receiver in football, maybe top 4. If you want to have Ceedee Lamb in that conversation, that's more than fair. I think he's already ahead of everybody else except that top 3 right now. He's got Russell Wilson coming along, and with Russell Wilson, he's got that moon ball, so he can hit him on that deep ball, but then he should just be able to hit him in stride way more often than Daniel Jones. And Malik Nabers, if you watched his college football tape, he was one of the best yards after catch receivers, just finding ways to make guys miss in space and just unbelievable yards after contact. He can take a hit and bounce off you and get to the end zone, and then he can also go up and high point the ball. I can't wait for this season as a Giants fan to watch Malik Nabers go to work. Number 1 on the Giants for a reason. I would be drafting Malik Nabers with confidence in the first round. I'm not worried about the back injury. I'm not worried about the toe injury. I think that Malik Nabers has the ability to see 170 plus targets. We'll see how Dable runs this offense, but man, when I went to Giants camp, it was feed Malik Nabers time when they were practicing. Every time the ones were out there, it was Russell Wilson to Malik Nabers. I think it was about 50% of the passes I watched him throw go to Malik Nabers. So this kid, a guy I've loved since college, continuing to dominate for my favorite team. Draft Malik Nabers in the first round. Now we have 2 tiers left with just 3 players. That leaves our tier 2 game changers. And the first guy, none other than Ceedee Lamb. Now, the Cowboys, like we talked about with George Pickens and earlier with the Micah news, their defense is not going to be good. So Ceedee Lamb, he's going to have to cook this year. And man, he was saying he's ready. We all know Ceedee Lamb. He finished as the wide receiver 1 in fantasy before and shown us the ability to do it with Dak Prescott. This team under Dak can be a top 3 scoring offense, no doubt in my mind. Also, with having a shakier, younger O-line and a poor running game, they're going to have to rely on Dak to throw maybe 600 plus times this year, especially with that poor defense and being in shootouts and just being down a lot more than they typically are in the past. The Cowboys are going to need to be very similar to the Bengals of last season, and that just creates so much fantasy goodness. It's like the perfect trifecta lining up. The defense is bad, it's a high-passing quarterback, and the running game is not that good. It can't get much better than that for Ceedee. If you want to take him as your wide receiver 2 this year, I have no qualms about that. He is easily one of the most talented wide receivers in all of football right now, and he's still in the prime of his career. Him and Dak have an incredible chemistry. Now with George Pickens on the other side, that could help things even more and make this offense be a little bit better. Buy Ceedee Lamb and draft him early on. Our last game changer in tier 2 is Justin Jefferson, Jettas. And throughout the summer, I've seen Jefferson start to fall because of his hamstring injury news that happened earlier in the summer in best ball. He would typically make it to pick 7 or pick 8, which is just a great value to me. Justin Jefferson, he's still in this tier for me, no doubt. Without Jordan Addison there the first 3 weeks, he should just come in with his 30% locked in target share and just be Justin Jefferson out there. He's the best wide receiver on a per game basis for yards. He's had one of the most electric starts to an NFL wide receiver career I've ever seen. He's on a Hall of Fame pace, and if he keeps it up, he's going to be a no doubter first ballot. We all know how Justin Jefferson is regardless of quarterbacks, and I know that's the major question mark. J.J. McCarthy, their quarterback, finally getting his chance from last year, getting his start this season. That's going to be really interesting to see how it works out, because they spent a very high draft pick on this kid and they let Sam Darnold go last year, who won 14 games for them. And I know he collapsed in the playoffs
and that final game against the Lions. He just couldn't live up to those big pressure moments when everybody was watching and it mattered the most. Sam Darnold, he folded like a chair, unfortunately, for him. But he still got that $30 million contract with the Seattle Seahawks, so good for him. But Justin Jefferson, a guy who's quarterback proof, all comes down to the touchdown upside. If Justin Jefferson can get 8+ touchdowns, he's probably going to be a top 3 wide receiver. But if he's sub 8 touchdowns, he's probably not going to pay off at his ADP. It's really, the margins are just that thin with the talent at wide receiver these days, especially at the top. If you want to take him as the second wide receiver off the board, I think that's fair, and I see the reason. With the Jordan Addison suspension, and the team just knows how to find him. Kevin O'Connell runs a great scheme. Tier 1, my top dog, Jamar Chase, called my shot on this kid before he even played a snap in the league. After that 2019 LSU unbelievable championship season, he went absolutely bonkers with Joe Burrow, finishing with over 1,700 receiving yards and 20 touchdowns as a sophomore. He didn't even play his junior season and was still drafted top 5. Somehow drafted after Kyle Pitts. I bet the Falcons are regretting that. But my take on Jamar Chase coming out, literally, I said this kid is going to be a Hall of Famer. I don't know if I've ever seen a better player coming out of college than that kid, in my opinion, and I'm so glad he proved me right. This kid is the best wide receiver in football. Hands down to me. I don't care. You can argue Justin Jefferson all you want. He plays the kind of style of football that I love the most. He's got the high touchdown ability, and his yards after catch, he's literally like a running back out there. He has more yards after catch than Justin Jefferson does in his entire career by over 150 yards, and he's played a year less of football. It's actually insane how good he is with the ball in his hands. And he is definitely, in my opinion, the scariest player once he has the ball in his hands. No doubt. It's almost like Odell Beckham Jr. to me. These LSU guys, once they catch the ball, they just make unbelievable plays. With Jamar Chase, it's magic. He can turn a sling into a house call like that. He can go up and moss the best. He can run a dig and Joe Burrow will hit him perfect in stride. Playing with Joe Burrow, these two have an unspoken bond. He's been playing with him since college, so obviously that helps a lot. These guys got the contract done. There's nothing to worry about. This is a locked in first overall pick. Don't even think about it. Sleep soundly on your pillow. Sleep beautifully after your draft knowing you selected Jamar Chase and he has the chance to win you a league on any given week. He's going to be able to give you multiple touchdowns in a week. He's going to be able to give you weeks with 10+ catches. He has the opportunity to get 200+ yards in a single game. I could talk all day about this guy, Jamar Chase. He's one of my favorite players to watch. Please draft him first overall, please. There's no one else you should be taking. I know I saw Adam Schefter say Bijan Robinson. I love Bijan this year. It's Jamar Chase. Don't overthink it. All right, guys. I'm really glad I could finally get my wide receivers done and go through my tiers one by one for you guys. I can't believe I forgot about Devontae Adams. Where would he have slotted in? He would probably have slotted in right in my established vets tier. And I'm so sorry about that, guys. I don't know what happened. I must have missed him when I was going through my list. But regardless of that, we went through my tiers. We went over some draft strategy as well and just like a quick breakdown of some of the things I noticed in my drafts throughout the summer. I really want you to take all my advice and apply it to your drafts now. The season is around the corner. We're about to kick off this fantasy football year on a great note, hopefully. I know you guys are going to do great. Believe in yourself. Trust yourselves. Don't panic when you're on the clock. And throughout the season, tune back into this show because I will keep you guys updated with what's going on. Guys to target, guys to trade for, guys to trade away, who's going to break out. All those things that you need to know are going to be covered right here on this show. I just thank you guys so much for continuing to tune in. It's been a great time researching and helping you guys learn about my process and how I like to attack fantasy football and some of my player takes as well. I love the wide receivers. They're probably my favorite position to talk about. So this was just a fun episode. And with that said, guys, we'll catch you in the next one. Good luck in your drafts. Peace out.